5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
On November 15th, 2021, we set out from the Good Wife Shopping Center on the exact day, 50 years after the very first Cannonball, on a race called the Musket Ball. So let's back up. What's the Musket Ball? It is a 100 horsepower cannonball run hosted by John Ficarra. You probably know him from all the great stories here, but he used to do the cheap car cannonball, as I call it, the 2904. And for the 50th anniversary, he wanted to do something special that no one had done before. So when I heard the rules, I thought, that can't be the only rule. 100 wheel horsepower, and that's it. So I called John. I said, John, is this the only rule? He goes, that is the only rule. Like, there's no budget or anything. He said, no. I had a plan. So he didn't say anything about torque. So I thought, what is the most aerodynamic car that I could possibly get? And that would be a Honda Insight. And I was going to swap in a Volkswagen TDI 1.9 liter ALH motor into it and detune it to 100 wheel horsepower. The perfect plan. Now, that's a big project. So I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get an '01 Golf, something around that era, and just do that. I don't have time for a project like this. But lo and behold, I get the Golf, and 1 month later, what pops up on Facebook Marketplace? A Volkswagen TDI swapped Honda Insight. I immediately called Doug. I'm like, Doug, we got to buy this thing. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to build, and it's already done. So we call, Doug gets it bought, ships it out to me. Perfect. It hadn't been out that long. I don't think anybody saw it out there because I didn't want anyone to know what we're bringing to this race. So I get the car, and I should have known. In my mind, I'm thinking, great, the car's already done. Put my police countermeasures in it, put a fuel cell in it, and boom, we're off to the races. Just like any other car that I buy that someone else has built, there was a lot of, I guess, flaws. I suppose if you were just driving around town, it's one thing. But if you're trying to race this thing across the country, that's a whole other thing. So of course, I end up redoing the whole thing. I probably should have just done a project from the start, but here we are. This thing was kind of haphazardly put together using like the factory front mount intercooler from the Golf, just kind of tossed in there. It's using the original intercooler piping that's kind of just like jammed in there and forced to work. It's running a stock turbo, and this thing shakes like you wouldn't believe. It had solid motor mounts. It was so loud. I mean, it was terrible. Like I wouldn't make it 100 miles in this car. It was that bad. So out comes the engine, and I took it over to my buddy Blaine Hinsey at BRH Fabrication. So he's fabricating brand new motor mounts, exhaust, front mount intercooler, intercooler piping. I mean, we're basically redoing the whole damn thing here. After I get all that sorted out, I took it over to my buddy Gibby, and he's going to be handling the fuel cell, all the mechanicals, and all the electrical stuff, the police countermeasures, and these type of things. So I get this thing all together, and one thing that I knew I needed to do is I needed to extend the RPM range of this car, because my secret weapon was torque. But the problem is the higher the RPM, the torque is falling off. So I need to get this thing to have as long of gears as I possibly can. So the ALH TDI did not come with a 6-speed in the United States, and only a 5-speed. But in Europe, they had a 6-speed option. So that's getting me some extra gearing. So I got one of those put in there, and that helped, but still, I need to extend this as long as I can, because once torque falls off, being detuned, like I'm eventually the car's just not going to be able to push through the air any longer. So I fit the absolute biggest wheels and tires I could on this thing to get the longest gearing possible. And that netted me with 121 mile an hour top speed with 100 wheel horsepower. John had said that if you went over 100 horsepower, that there are going to be dire consequences. Like, you are not going to win this race if you cheat. So honestly, I like rules like that. When you give me parameters like that, I love working with inside the rules and just finding the absolute best way to make it, and within the rules. So we got this thing on my dyno, and I always run my DynoJet 4-wheel drive. It's kind of a pain in the neck to make 2-wheel drive, but I figured it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. So we tuned the car to like 98, 99 wheel horsepower, knowing that at the start of this race, they're going to be picking people's cars to kind of like, see if you're cheating. So I want to make sure like I'm good. Like, it's going to be under 100 wheel horsepower. What I found out was if you have a DynoJet in 2-wheel drive, the horsepower is a little bit different. So when we got to the start of this race, everyone's given a sticker, and you have to put the sticker on whatever car you think is cheating. And as soon as I parked, like, my whole windshield is plastered with stickers because everyone sees this car with this front mount intercooler and they thought for sure that I'm cheating. So I'm one of the 10 cars that gets picked to go up on the dyno. So we get the thing on the dyno. I can't say I was relieved. I was more disappointed. The car only made 86 wheel horsepower. So I left 14 horsepower on the table. So apparently the difference between the 4-wheel drive and the 2-wheel drive is absolutely huge. I was expecting maybe a couple, on the safe side. But yeah, we're stuck with 86 wheel horsepower. There were some cars that went over 100 wheel horsepower. And, well, clearly, as John said, there's no chance they're going to win. There's going to be stiff penalties. What are the penalties, you ask? So penalty option 1 is you have to have a live lobster and keep it alive across the whole country and make it to the Portofino. Now, if you know John Ficarra, this is very typical of the weirdness that he would come up with. But option 2 was you had to build a puzzle, and depending on how much horsepower you're over, it depends on how many pieces this puzzle would be. So you have to build this the night before the race and glue it to your hood, and then a 10-pound per horsepower over penalty. As soon as I heard this, I said, that's not detrimental at all. Now, 10 pounds per horsepower over in a quarter mile, that would be something. Like, that would affect it. But over the course of 2,800 miles, like, that's not going to do anything. So I knew we were in trouble. The cars that I was most worried about is we've got 2 Volkswagen Jetta TDIs. David Williams made 124 wheel horsepower. The Boston Brawlers, they had 110 wheel horsepower. And then Yummy Dietz, I think he had 115 wheel horsepower in this Ford Focus. And these are the cars that I'm going to have to beat. And of course, I'm not only playing within the rules, I'm actually sandbagging with only 86 wheel horsepower. So the start of this whole thing is absolutely crazy. Something that's never been done in Cannonball history. John did a Le Mans start. So some of you may know what that is. Some of you may not. So we all stood around in a circle, did the countdown, and you have to run to your car, start it, and get out of the Good Wives Shopping Center. There's 25 people in this run. It was absolute chaos. Obviously, the race is not won in the first mile of this thing, but man, you would have thought for sure it was. It was absolute chaos. And I can assure you, John would never do that again. So I'm most concerned with these Jettas and Yummy in this Ford Focus. David had decided to take the southern route, while the rest of us decided on the north route. So we're getting through Pennsylvania, and on the west half, I've got the Boston Brawlers behind me and Yummy a ways behind them. So we get a call from Chris, and he says, hey, your car is smoking, and it's just starting to snow. So I don't know if he's seeing that. I don't know if he's playing a joke on us. So he's like, something's smoking. So we pull over, kind of check things out. They go past, nothing. The car's totally fine. So to this day, they swear that they were being serious. They're good sportsmen. I believe them. I think it might have been the snow. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. So we're ripping across Illinois, and Boston Brawlers are out ahead somewhere, and we're using the Joiner app so we can see where people are. And I've got Yummy behind me a couple miles. He's behind me through Illinois. So we get into Iowa. It's nighttime. I've basically been running rabbit for Yummy behind me for a long time. So I decide I'm just going to let him pass me. Iowa's kind of tricky. They use a lot of instant on radar. They'll sit with their lights off. So I'm like, I'll just let him run in front of me for a while and kind of take a break. So I let them pass me. I get in behind them and I flip my brake lights off. So we're running at a pretty good clip, probably 115, 120 miles an hour. And all of a sudden I get blasted with KA band. A trooper heading the other direction just nailed Yummy. So we're coming up to this kind of like turnoff where you could exit the highway. So immediately as we get there, boom, Yummy's gone. And this cop is turning around. So I'm like, great. Like, he's disappeared, and I'm going to be the one that takes the brunt of this. So I just keep going down the road at the speed limit, and I see this cop coming up, behind us, and all of a sudden he darts off at this exit, going to look for Yummy in the Focus. Well, he had gone on the frontage road and found the last house on this frontage road, pulled in the driveway, shut off the lights, and disappeared. So I'm back up running flat out, and I start getting these KA band hits from behind, and they're getting increasingly stronger. And then I start seeing headlights and a car coming up. This cop has got back on the highway, and he is hitting all the cars in front of him, trying to find Yummy. So I'm still running with the brake lights off. So I slam on the brakes, get down to the speed limit. Me and Doug rip all the screens off the dashboard, and just 10 and 2, just me over here hypermiling in my Honda Insight. The cop doesn't even slow down to look at us. I mean, there's no way that there's a Honda Insight going 120 miles an hour, and just blows right past us. So we get Yummy on the phone and said, hey, he just blew past us. He's out there looking for you, but you're probably safe now that you're back there. So we continued on our way, and that was the last time we saw Yummy. I ran that car flat out across the whole state of Nebraska. And when we got to the high plains of Colorado, we checked our Joiner app, and we saw the Boston Brawlers were up in front of us. So now their top speed is 126 miles per hour. I'm stuck at 121, so it's going to be hard to get past them. But Doug had a little trick up his sleeve. He had brought a radar gun with. So I got within close range enough that we could hit him with radar. Doug blasts them twice. They slam on the brakes, and boom, we go right past them. It was so epic, but I knew, obviously, they have a higher top speed. So eventually they did catch us. They did pass us again. And we stopped for our second fuel stop in Colorado. So we fill up, Doug hops in the driver's seat, and off we go. And as he's driving, he said, what was the voltage before? It seems kind of low. Well, we pull over. Sure enough, we had broken the belt tensioner. So I had lost the drive belt. Thankfully, the TDI is designed in a way that the only thing that the engine actually powers is the alternator. Water pump and everything is mechanical. So the only thing we have to worry about is the battery. So now it's the middle of the night. The closest Walmart's like 100 miles away. So we get back on the road, and at every place we could, we're turning off the headlights, just trying to maintain this battery to make it to this Walmart. So we get to the Walmart like 4:30 in the morning. It opens at 6. And unfortunately, our chance of winning this thing was gone. So when Walmart opens, I buy a battery. I had a set of jumper cables. I just hook it up. And the plan was to get to I Crave Boost in Denver. My buddies Schiller and Joy, they've bailed us out before. Ironically, same stretch of highways where Doug's Ultra Beige broke down and died, and I Crave Boost had to come and rescue us out of this. So the idea was at least we'll get there, get a belt tensioner on this thing, and at least we can finish the race. So we got there, he got it fixed. Great job as always. But hindsight being 2020, I don't know what we were thinking. I should have just bought like 3 or 4 batteries and just finished the race without an alternator. Like I easily could have done that. The car would have been hybrid again, kind of. And at least we probably would have been able to come in the top 5 or 6. But you know, when you're driving through the night, you're not like I guess thinking coherently. But we got back up on the road and we did finish the run. And what turned out is the Boston Brawlers actually got stopped by a roadblock up in one of the mountain passes. So for like 3 hours. So even if we wouldn't have broke down, we would have still had substantial delays. So unfortunately, we were out of the running. And we were tracking the other Volkswagen TDI. And, you know, before all this happened, before we got the roadblock, before we broke down, we were running pretty neck and neck. From what we could tell, we're probably all in like the 31-hour range, which is kind of crazy if you think about it with 100-wheel horsepower cars. But we did end up making it to the Portofino. We ended up with a time of 39 hours and 41 minutes. And that's with like a 7 to 8 hour delay. So I think that if we would have had the perfect run, we probably could have got in at 31 hours in this crazy little Honda Insight, which would have been pretty impressive. But overall, the event was awesome. Having everyone start at once gave it the opportunity that basically like everyone finished within like 6 hours of each other. So it was cool to, well, we weren't there because we were one of the last ones. We weren't the last, but we were one of the last. But it was a cool event because you get there and then there's cars coming in. So you're able to like hang out in the parking lot, celebrate. And it really gave everyone a feel of like what it was like to run in the 70s. And what's ironic is even with like half the horsepower of those cars from the 70s, we were like running times that they did. So double the traffic, half the horsepower, we were still able to make some really good time across the country. But the celebration at the Portofino was great, being in that little foyer where everyone's hanging out, doing the awards ceremony. And it really, I think, was a great tribute to all those, the guys that laid the ground before us.
This month of VINwiki content is brought to you by Auto Tempest. Auto Tempest has supported VINwiki for years, Car Trek as well, all of our friends, but what we really love them for is that it is the most powerful way to shop for your next car. They compile all the results from all the major listing sites into one place. Autotempest.com, all the cars, one search. That means you get to all the deep, dark corners of the internet to find the exact car that you're looking for as fast and efficiently and powerfully as possible. You also get to see how it stacks up against all the other cars like it that are for sale around the country. And so check them out now at the link in the description below to shop for your next car with Auto Tempest and thank them for their ongoing support of VINwiki.